Looks like it's working. Talk really quick and make sure you can hear yourself.
Uh, Test. Yep, we're good.
Okay. We'll start up at 8:30. Oh shit. Hello and welcome to Sunday morning live streams. Today it's just Tony and I. AJ is at a wedding, and I think Kramer's also at a wedding. They're both on their way back right now. Hopefully they'll get in for game time, but it's just gonna be me and Tony here handling the live stream. And right away, breaking news. Kind of saw it coming with him practicing Friday, but Joe Mixon is officially active versus 49ers. Um, I think it's an obvious must play. But yeah, so some good news to start out the live stream. We're hearing Antonio Brown's also in. He, according to Rappaport, who I don't think he's had a really good track record this season, he's going to be playing. He's going to get lots of snaps, and he's going to be used early and often. Um, but we will see. We're going to start the show the same way as we did last week. We're going to go over some, start sit kind of situations. Look at two guys that you probably only are going to start one of them. Which one would you start? Let's start with Miles Sanders versus Devin Singletary. Tony, what is your take on that matchup?
Um, I think between the two of them, probably like Devin Singletary better just opportunity wise. Still, we still don't know fully what's going on with the Miles Sanders, Darren Sproles situation in Philadelphia, but it should be one of those games where Buffalo's defense can hold the Giants to not too many points, and then the Bills get up pretty early, and hopefully they feed Devin.
Yeah, I really like the passing work Devin got. I think he's a pretty safe play no matter what. He was obviously so much better than Frank Gore on the ground. I like Devin Singletary a little bit more this week, though. I just in our Fantasy Boys League bid $81 for Miles Sanders because for some reason somebody dropped him. I'm high on Miles Sanders. I think he's not a bad play this week. I just if I had both of them, I'd probably be playing Singletary over him, but I think you can play both of them. It's not too much to read into this. I think the Giants, defense front seven isn't too good. Atlanta's front seven isn't too good. They're both looking to have positive game scripts, in my opinion. I think they both are favors or both on the favored team. So yeah, don't feel bad about starting either one. I think we both go Devin Singletary though if you choose one. And this one I wanted to bring up because I think Tony and I actually somewhat disagree. It's Josh Jacobs' outlook today. He's playing against the Chiefs, so the defense isn't good. The game script probably not ideal for Jacobs. Tony, where do you have him ranked? If you're looking at what RB5 on the week, RB6 on the week, where would you put
I
him?
mean, definitely in the top 10 still. He is a really good pass catcher. I don't know why people underrate his pass catching ability. So even if they get down early, he's going to be on the field catching passes.
So I don't disagree. He's a good pass catcher. We did see like slight utilization of Jalen Richard and a couple pass catching downs. My thing is, it's hard for me to say he's for sure a top 10 this week just because I think they might get away from him if the score becomes out of hand and even get away from him in the passing game. Like, they'll start taking a lot more shots downfield. I feel like Darren Waller is very secure in that short yardage play. I mean, if he can break a screen, that's how I think he gets into the top 10 is, one of those small little passes he really takes for something. Because I just don't see him running the ball a lot this week. I do think Gruden is going to try and run the ball and just try and take as much time off the clock so Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the ball in his hand. So if you have him, I wouldn't feel bad about playing him. I just don't know if I agree with the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the Oakland wins that game is by playing a really slow game, and that really Josh Jacobs to have a good game. So
Yeah, and there's no doubt I give what we saw out of Oakland's line, definitely give them the favorable matchup over the Chiefs front seven. I think they'll handle them. If they can handle Denver, they should destroy the Chiefs up front. All right, so far we've gone with Devin Singletary over Miles Sanders. Think they're both good starts. Tony's very high on Josh Jacobs. He even had him as one of his DFS plays last night. I'm not so high, but I do think if you have him, go ahead and put him in there, even if it's in your flex. You know, his upside is there, especially with screen work. Looking at number 3, I think this one's going to be very hard. We might have to talk about a little bit. Cooper Kupp versus Deshaun Jackson. Cooper Kupp, LA going up against New Orleans, going to be a very high scoring game. Eagles going up against Atlanta, I think another high scoring game. Which one do you play?
ooh, I mean, I really think I'd have to go with Cooper. Just yeah, I mean that's the person I'll probably pick, just because I think that game is just going to be higher scoring, and it's the way the Saints pass defense looked last week. I just think every single one of those Rams wide receivers could feed.
Yeah, so breaking it down a little bit farther, last week I think what we saw a lot of is the middle was wide open for the Houston Texans. And Cooper Kupp out of the slot operates a lot on those skinny posts. He gets a lot of in routes. So does Robert Woods, but I'm pretty high on Cooper Kupp this week. So I think Cooper Kupp, a lot of these we took actually from the Reddit Fantasy Football Index. These are questions from real people, real situations they're going through. And I saw this one 3 times. At first I was like, oh, no brainer, Cooper Kupp, but Sean Jackson did have 35 points last week, and I think Atlanta plays better against the Eagles than they did against the Vikings. I think they are able to put up some points, so it's a ceiling versus floor play, but I think Cooper Kupp might have a 30-point ceiling this week. It's just not as likely as Djax getting 30 points, but his floor is much much higher than Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, the over unders for both games are the same, so I mean you can't really even go off that to try and help you.
Yeah. One thing we utilize, and I think a lot of people, if you guys are playing fantasy, you can look at is Vegas does a very good job at predicting stuff. So you look at the over under, and then you look at the implied point totals, which means you look at the spread of the game. So if it's over under a 50 and Philadelphia is favored by 7, let me do some quick math here. That's 30 points for Philadelphia is implied and 23 for Atlanta. So there you go. We actually just got a question from Hamburger Helper. He says, so you guys talked about both of them so far. Would you pick Deshaun Jackson or Devin Singletary for your flex? Personally, I think that depends on your scoring format, but I'm probably going Djax.
Yeah, especially if you need a higher upside guy, I think Djax is the guy that could get you more points.
If you have, for some reason, your team is absolutely stacked and you're extremely confident in the rest of the players, I think Singletary does have the higher floor slightly, and I do think he has a chance of having a good week. But I almost always am going to go Djax there, unless you get like the fantasy footballers give points per carry, which I find very stupid or something like that. But yeah, I think Tony and I both agree with Djax on that one. Our fourth one, so just going back to what we were saying quickly, I think we both go Cooper Kupp then.
Yeah, Cooper
Right.
Kupp.
So number 4, this came up so much. I was actually laughing. If you hit Control F with 500 comments open, there's probably 50 LaShawn McCoy questions. So what I put out the little game plan is LaShawn McCoy versus literally everybody else you could flex. Where does he fit in? I think a lot of people are confused or curious where his production is, and to be honest, I don't have the best idea, but I think it's a pretty positive game script for him today, and I think he gets some good points.
Yeah, I mean, compared to last week, I think he gets a little bit more work just because he's been on the team, and even though it is still Andy Reid's offense, it's been a while since he's played for him. So, and just I think the chemistry with the backfield and quarterback and everybody gets a little bit better. So he's probably gonna at least see more snaps than he did last week.
Yeah. McCoy got 30% of snaps. I say that raises to about 45% this week. So when we talk about him versus other running backs, where do you kind of put him in? Is there a couple running backs you think you could compare him to, which would be kind of...
Probably like any of the ones that are like the high upside, like maybe Chris Thompson, Devin Singletary, guys that you know are going to get snaps. You just don't know if they're going to get touchdowns or not, because I don't think McCoy has as much touchdown upside as some other players.
That's true. So we talked about Singletary versus Sanders. What do you go? You throw McCoy into that equation. Which one of those three you go with?
In standard, I think I'd go probably McCoy over Singletary, and PPR I'd probably go Singletary over McCoy.
I think you hit the nail on the head for me. That's going to be my answer. And then Miles Sanders coming in third. Again, I think all three of them are good plays. But McCoy, standard, Singletary, PPR is our answer to that question. So let's get into the games of the week. Tony's going to start out with Buffalo against the Giants. I'm going to hand him the mic. I'll be back in a quick second. So basically, what do you see as give me the outlook for Singletary, Barkley. What wide receivers? I mean, the wide receivers for the Giants are Cody Lattimore.
I don't even have any wide receivers listed on my little thing.
All right, go ahead, take it over.
Yeah, so for the Giants, I really think the only pass catcher you're going to want on that team is going to be Evan Ingram. The offense through the air is going to have to run through him and Barkley for easy dump offs. I don't think, with how good that Buffalo defense is, that there's any value at the wide receiver position for this. Barkley is going to probably have a solid game because I just don't see too many other people on that team touching the ball. Like I said, Buffalo has probably one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best defense this year. So you're really only going to have two guys on that team that bring any fantasy value. On the other end, though, I do like Josh Allen. I think he, either with his feet or with his arm, he's going to have a big game today. Devin Singletary, we already talked about him pretty much. I think he's a pretty safe play. The only thing I worry about is if Buffalo gets up by a lot early, they could just put Gore in there, take 3 yards of carry, and just run out the clock. That's really the only risk I see with him. And as for pass catchers, I really like John Brown this week. I can see him having a big game just like Michael Gallup or Amari Cooper did last week.
Yeah, I'm with you on the John Brown. We talked about him a little bit in DFS. He's kind of more expensive than we thought he would be, but I still found a way to work him into a lineup or two because 12. Let me click on him. I think he had 12 targets last week.
Yeah, I think it was 12. I think it was it 10 receptions on 12 targets?
No, it was 10
or was
targets,
10...
seven receptions. I think John Ross had the 12 and 10. But 120, like his targets are super valuable. I mean, 17.6 yards per catch. Him and Josh Allen, I said before the season, it's a little bit of a Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes light, right? Like Josh Allen has that cannon, not as accurate. John Brown's fast, not as fast as Tyreek Hill, but they can do the same thing where it's if you can hold on to the ball, John Brown's going to outrun the cornerback, and it's just can Josh Allen make that throw?
Exactly.
So moving on to the next matchup, I went with Seattle and Pittsburgh. And I'm loving this matchup for both teams. So, first of all, you guys start on the Pittsburgh side. Roethlisberger must play, in my opinion. If you have him, he's at home. He's against a secondary that did not look good. Play him. We look at the running backs. James Conner. I think Seahawks stay in this game for sure, but I don't think James Conner doesn't produce. And a big part of that is, as I was saying, even though he only got 46% of snaps, I think that goes up this week because on 4 targets, he got 4 receptions and 44 yards. That's 11 yards per catch. That is that's even higher than top tier running back. That's unheard of. And last year he had the highest yards per catch out of any starting running back. I think Mike Tomlin and that offense, they utilize him more this week in the passing game, and I think they're able to rush with him because they're not going to be down obviously 30-0. Jalen Samuels, do not touch him. I wouldn't play if he's on your roster in a very deep league. Juju Smith-Schuster, 100%. You're obviously going to play him if you have him season long. I'd be playing him in DFS. Not touching Dante Moncrief. So despite how bad the Seahawks secondary is, you got to be able to catch the ball. So unfortunately, as I've been banging this drum all offseason as well, Dante Moncrief can't catch footballs. He had one of the worst weeks I've ever seen, and I don't think he bounces back from that. And lastly, I just want to touch on James Washington. I'm in a very deep league with the Megala Bowl Fantasy Footballers whole tournament, and I had a lot of injuries, so I'm actually starting James Washington. I think if you're in some scenario where you want to take just a chance, he's a guy that can have a big week just because of how bad Seattle look. I mean, John Ross, 12 targets, 10 receptions, 100-something yards. James Washington can do exactly what John Ross can do. And Ben Roethlisberger, I think, is a better QB than Andy Dalton, so there's a chance there. Dante Moncrief is ridiculous. I wish he was on the team. Then
I think.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, I think this could be the week that James Washington breaks. To be honest.
100%. And those wide receivers need that 1 week where they really come into their own, and he's got everything going for him this week. I mean, Moncrief looks horrible. Bad secondary at home. Roethlisberger, very good at bouncing back. So, Seahawks side, Russell Wilson, not a bad play this week. He's not one of my favorite quarterbacks, but it's not like the Steelers have a good defense this year. Chris Carson, on the other hand, I actually think might outscore James Conner. The front seven for Steelers didn't look good. I mean, they held Sony Michel, but then they got torn up by Rex Burkhead and James White. They're going to feed Carson. We know it. We saw it last week. So with all that feeding, it's going to come probably a touchdown, 20 carries. He was utilized. I think he had 7 targets, and Russell Wilson only threw the ball 20 times. So that's 35% of the target share went to Chris Carson on top of all the carries he's getting. He's just a utilization machine. 100% you're playing him. I think he's going to play well this week. Let's go down to those wide receivers. Tyler Lockett must play. Now, here's a guy we may have a little discussion about. Thank you, Henry McQueen, for your comment. We'll get to your question in 1 second. Would you play DK Metcalf, Tony?
This week? Yeah, probably. The way Steelers pass defense. And just the way the Patriots are able to do just the play action pass all over the Steelers. The way that Seattle runs the ball, they're going to be biting even harder than they were against the Patriots. So
I think the thing is, Russell Wilson throws the ball so little, you get a little worried. But again, Philip Dorsett destroyed that secondary, so I think DK Metcalf's not going to have a problem doing it. I wouldn't bank on him having a big week. I'm not, again, the Steelers looked bad last week, but I think that was a lot to do with Bill Belichick. I don't think they're that bad. Personally, I give the Steelers the win in this game, and I'd be playing a lot more of their players. So the question we have before we go on to our next matchup, who do I sit out of Mixon, Max, Singletary, Duke Johnson, or Josh Gordon? So pick one to sit. I think it's got to go between Singletary or Duke Johnson for me.
So what were the options again?
Who do I sit out? Joe Mixon, Marlon Mack, Devin Singletary, Duke Johnson, or Josh Gordon, half PPR?
Probably Duke Johnson and half PPR.
Yeah, I'm going Duke, actually. I think people kind of looked at last week and was like, oh, Carlos Hyde was kind of an anomaly that game because of how well he ran. I actually think this means he's getting more snaps. I think he looked better than Duke Johnson.
I mean, I could see why people are considering Joe Mixon just because ankle injury, questionable to come into the game time decision. All you really need is him to not feel good after a couple carries, and then 2 points out of him. So I understand the logic there.
I understand.
But if he's active, you got to play him, I feel.
Yeah, the thing is, Joe Mixon gets 4 points and then comes out of the game. Duke Johnson may get 4 points the whole game, right? And Joe Mixon has the incredible upside. I don't think he practices Friday. Like, the fact that he practiced Friday in full, and now he's active, I feel a lot more confident. So that answers your question. we would 100% recommend Josh Gordon. We're both very high on him, even with Antonio Brown there. I think Josh Gordon has a great week. Marlon Mack, I think, has a good week against that. That Titans defense is stout, but very good floor play. Nick Chubb actually ran pretty well against them. So, and then we talked about Devin Singletary a lot earlier. Both really like him this week. So I think we both agree Duke Johnson is the man to sit out there. So before, again, we get into the next matchup, just some news. Mike Williams, who was questionable, is officially active against the Lions. Kind of puts a little bit of a damper on my Keelan Allen plays on DFS, but I'm still keeping him in there because Hunter Henry's out. Antonio Brown is officially active. They will feed him, according to Rappaport. And Joe Mixon, again, officially active. So those are the 3 last tweets from Rappaport. Just going to refresh the Twitter feed so you guys can catch up on some new news. So the next one, we have Detroit Chargers. Speaking of that Mike Williams start, Tony, take it away.
Yeah, in this game, I really like the pass catchers for the Chargers just because of how bad the Lions got torched by the Cardinals Chargers near the end. So I was really gonna say if Mike Williams is inactive, Keenan Allen is gonna be an amazing play this week. Possibly could have been the wide receiver 1 on the week if Mike Williams was out, especially with the Hunter Henry. But I think both of them are going to be pretty good plays. I still think Keenan Allen is definitely going to go off. And I love Austin Eckler this week. He's probably, like I said, probably top 5, I would say, at running back this week, if not top 3. On the other side of the ball, though, Detroit, I think Kenny Golladay could have a really decent game, but I'm not too sure. I'm not confident anymore in Marvin Jones, to be honest. I think he's the 3rd or 4th target on that team. Amendola is going to get all the underneath stuff. Hawkinson and Golladay seem to be the better other pass catchers on that team. So
yeah,
it's going to be pretty hard for, I think, Marvin Jones to have good games now.
To put in my 2 cents, I actually dropped Marvin Jones for that Miles Sanders pickup because I completely agree with you. I think Hawkinson and Amendola are going to eat so many targets. Jones is just going to be a roster clog. Like, the only reason you'd start him is everybody else on your bench is injured. And at that point, you might as well just stream the position and find someone you like the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, really, he's pretty much just going to be – I feel like he's going to be the guy on waivers every week that when people have bye-week fill-ins, they just add him for that week, and then he gets dropped on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, and then Kerryon Johnson, I think, has a good game. Marlon Mack did pretty good against the Chargers. I am worried about the snap count and the carries, but if he doesn't have a good game this week, I'm really worried about. That's probably the best way to look. Yeah, if he has a bad game this week, I would be starting to panic.
Ty Johnson. So that was your preseason like sleeper pick.
Well, it was before the
JD
roster
McKissick.
cut. Yeah, and they picked up J.D. McKissick, but yeah, that really dampened that whole thing because if he wasn't on the team, he would definitely be the guy in there when J.D. McKissick's in. So he's still a good dynasty ad though.
Did you talk at all about Justin Jackson? Would you play him this week? I personally wouldn't, but I wanted to hear your take on it.
I don't think I would play him. Eckler just looks so good that do you know what the snap counts were?
I can grab him right now.
Yeah, I don't think like Justin Jackson did really too much anyway.
Eckler got 75%, and Jackson got the other 25%, and he did.
Yeah, so it's pretty much Eckler's, Melvin Gordon, and Justin Jackson's at that point. But if Justin Jackson was utilized more in the pass game, I'd like him more, but he's not.
Yeah, the big thing for me is, I mean, Jackson did have 58 yards on 6 attempts. Like
he's a good runner,
but he only caught 1 pass for 4 yards on 3 targets. That's not good. Like, you should be bringing in a couple of those targets, and you should be getting more than 4 yards.
Yeah.
So, last, we're gonna go with the Minnesota Green Bay game. So, I've seen a lot of stuff I don't agree with. And I'm not basing this completely on last year, but historically, these are not defensive affairs between the Vikings and the Packers, especially in Green Bay, especially when it's early in the season. So, yes, the Vikings want to run the ball more, and I'm sure they're going to run the ball more. It's not going to be the explosion of a 28-28 game that we saw last year, but I don't see the score that's being predicted a lot of like 2017, 17-14. That's not what I think is going to happen. And I really want to focus on the pass catchers here. People are saying, why are you playing Stefon Diggs? You're worried about him because they're not passing as much. He's going against a Packers defense that looked good against Mitchell Trubisky, who just played horribly and is not a good quarterback. Diggs last year destroyed the Packers. The Packers secondary isn't revamped at all. All right, it's the same guys. They maybe got a little bit better, a little bit more experience. They brought in a better defensive coordinator. But I have no problem picking Diggs over any of these corners. The thing is, Stefon Diggs is just a good wide receiver. There's very few corners in the league that I think can stop Stefon. So as long as he gets the targets, he's going to be fine. And I think in this game, while the Vikings defense looked really good, Aaron Rodgers at home, he always plays well against the Vikings. And Davante Adams actually usually has Xavier Rhodes' number. I don't think I would pick MVS over Trey Waynes, but Adams over Rhodes is where the Packers are going to exploit the Vikings. Adams just, for some reason, he plays well against Xavier. It's the opposite of last week when I told you Julio doesn't. Don't play Julio. Well, obviously you play Julio. Don't play him in DFS. I think Davante Adams has a good week. I think the Packers score points, which means the Vikings have to pass the ball, and Diggs and Thielen are going to feast. I think they're both going to have big weeks. I think you play them both. I think Dalvin Cook, he doesn't have the same week he had last week. He's still a good floor play. He's going to get lots of carries. He's going to get utilized in the passing game enough where you feel fine about him. I would not start Aaron Jones. Typically, kind of those pass-catching running backs do a little bit better against the Vikings. However, the Packers don't seem to be throwing the damn ball to Aaron Jones. Aaron Rodgers just doesn't like doing that. He doesn't like throwing to his running backs. So I honestly am kind of staying away from him, especially in a matchup against a better defense. Drop Geronimo Allison if he's still on your roster. But yeah, I think Kirk Cousins has a good game. Rodgers has a good game. Adams, Thielen, Diggs, all good games. I'm going against this narrative that it's going to be a defensive affair, that you're worried about wide receivers on the Vikings side. I don't understand it. Thielen has gone up against the best corners in the NFL and has played well against them, so I don't understand what anyone sees in the Packers secondary. Correct me if I seem wrong here, but it's also Allen Robinson had a great game. He was open several times. I mean, he had a good game, and Mitchell Trubisky missed him on plenty of throws.
No, yeah, I agree. I think the reason people are super freaked out was just because of how bad that Bears-Packers game was fantasy-wise. But you have to remember, like you said, it's Mitchell Trubisky throwing the ball to a running back playing slot most of the game, and then Allen Robinson. And like you said, Allen Robinson had over 100 yards in that game. So I'm not worried at all about the Vikings pass catchers. I mean, they're all better. Every single pass catcher on the Vikings is better, and Kirk Cousins is, despite what some people may say, better than Mitch Trubisky.
Shout out to Hunter Westbrook, our favorite. So that concludes the matchups. We're going into who has a better week. This is one of our favorite segments. We have some really good ones. This week we're doing one QB, one running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end. So let's start with the QB. Here we go. Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, or Big Ben Roethlisberger. If you have, for some reason, all four on your fantasy team, which one are you playing?
It's really hard to not want to go with the upside of Brady, but I really think I'll probably this is like a last minute change, but I think I might go with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it's when I threw Lamar Jackson in there, I realized how much harder I made it on myself.
Yeah.
I didn't put Derek Carr and Mahomes in here because then it would just be trying way too hard to pick one. But I think this is a very good week for quarterbacks, to the point where it might be chalked. But Lamar Jackson's a good play. I'm gonna go with my guy Big Ben. I just think he torches Seattle this week, and my hope is Seattle then torches, Pittsburgh back, and we have a 50-50 game. That's a beautiful world we'd live in. So, but I'm gonna go with Big Ben, and part of that is, well, I think Lamar has a good week. You have to keep reminding yourself Miami's so bad. They are so terrible. Arizona's not even that bad. While they may be starting,
I mean, Matt Stafford looked pretty good on the stat sheet. So
it's true. It's true, but I think they run it a little bit more. I don't know. It all depends. Do you get those 80-yard passes again? It just looked like Miami wasn't even trying. And to bank on another, what, 260-plus yard TDs?
I mean, the other thing I kind of like about Lamar Jackson, if somehow that game stays close, he does have the best chance of pretty much everyone on the list to get like 100 rushing yards on top of
Oh,
whatever
for
he
sure.
gets passing. So
Yeah, I think Dak is a very safe play. I think Tom Brady's a good play, but I really, at this point, would bring it down to Lamar and Big Ben. I'm gonna go with Big Ben. Tony's gonna go with Lamar. Um, just a side question on that: are you starting Hollywood Brown? Um,
in the one league I own him, I'm actually forced
okay.
due to injuries to basically more than half my team. I don't think he's a bad play if otherwise too. I mean, that Cardinals defense is exploitable, and they want to use him just by how many targets he got when he was on the field. I just don't think they're worried about his health. So I don't. That's really the thing holding him back.
Yeah, and it's like he had 5 targets. He ran 12 total routes the whole game. I think if that game isn't such a blowout, he probably gets 35% snap count instead of 18. But the thing is, to have 12 routes run on 18% of snaps from 5 targets is pretty crazy utilization. If that goes up at all, I think he's an okay play. I'm in the same boat. I'm just worried that he doesn't get enough snaps. Like, he's so good, but he still needs to be in the game to get points.
Yeah, that's a big part of fantasy is you have to actually be on the field to get points.
No, we are not playing a point per tweet league or a point per analysis where Tony Romo would be the number one overall pick. All right, so for the running backs is Kerryon Johnson, Joe Mixon, who is active, Damian Williams, Marlon Mack. Who do you go with? I'll let you go first.
I think I'll go with Marlon Mack. So, yeah, I mean, people are gonna think that the Titans defense is a lot better than it is just because Baker handed them that game. Like I think Nick Chubb was averaging like almost 6 yards a carry that whole game. I'm not exactly sure, but he
Had,
he was getting chunk yardage on the ground. It wasn't his fault that they lost that game, and it wasn't like they really stopped him on the. It was just turnovers and sacks. So
yeah.
I think Marlon Mack has the potential to have a really good game, and then people are going to start questioning the Titans.
All right, that's an interesting choice. I was gonna say the one I'm not very confident in starting is Marlon Mack. And while I agree, Chubb didn't have a bad game. He had 75 on 17 attempts, so 4.4, not terrible, not great. Um, I'm not playing Damian. It's rough to play Damian Williams. I think you can against Oakland. I'm worried about Kerryon. I go Joe Mixon. If he's
Really?
active with the Friday practice, I think he gets enough points where I don't know. I feel confident in him. I don't think 49ers defense is that good. I think we saw Ronald Jones tear them up, which says enough. Where I think Joe Mixon could destroy that defense. I think he gets passing work. Um, we saw it last year. Like he's a great pass catching back. I mean, if you take health out of the equation, you would pick Mixon, right?
Yeah, I mean, if all things equal, yeah, it would probably be Mixon. I mean, the other thing to bring up with Marlon Mack with last week with the Browns game was the left tackle got kicked out pretty early, so that definitely probably had effect on the Browns rushing game against the Titans. So
Oh yeah, for sure. It 100% did. I totally forgot about that.
yeah, I mean, I really like Marlon Mack and I really like Mixon. If Mixon was healthy, he would be the easy pick.
So yeah, and that's the thing. I'm personally not too worried about his health because of that participation on Friday, but you never know. So if I think the actual ultra safe play would be Marlon Mack if you just need points, but I would go with Mixon. So we have a question from Speak the Truth. Lamar Jackson or Carson Wentz had Howard Thursday, so need makeup points. Um,
if you need the big game, I think Lamar Jackson you got to just roll with there.
Yeah, I think they both have great games. I think the worry is with Wentz. Well, I guess the worry with Jackson's too is the running backs get some of the TDs.
Yeah, but I mean, you have the upside of the rushing game with Lamar Jackson that I don't think you have as much with Wentz.
No, not anymore.
So that's why I think. I mean, when you're in a position where your tight end gets you 0 points and you need to make up points, you just got to go for the guy who could possibly drop 50 points this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna co-sign that. I'm gonna go with Lamar Jackson. That is a tough choice, but the thing is, there's a very real world where Philadelphia just destroys Atlanta, in my opinion. And of course,
Very true.
there's a world where that happens with Arizona, no doubt. But I think Kyler Murray showed me just enough where I think Lamar, he's gonna be utilized that whole game. If they're running out the clock, he still runs the ball, so you're getting points from him the whole entire game. I go with Lamar, the guy who I think could put up 40 or 50 points versus Wentz, where I think his ceiling is around what he did last week with 30.
I agree 100%.
So thank you for the question. We're going to move on to wide receivers now. Another tough one. John Brown, Hollywood Brown, Michael Gallup, or Scary Terry. So all the guys you probably picked up off waivers, or if you're like me, you already had them on your team because you're smart. But which one has the best week?
Ooh, I mean, this is a tough one. I just from a forward perspective, I think Hollywood Brown probably ranks last on this list.
Yeah.
And I think John Brown's probably the safest pick to get points. But oh man, like Gallup could have a really good game again, and same with Scary Terry because, I mean, Terry's going to be on the field the whole game pretty much. He got most of the snaps last. Oh man, I think I'll just go with Gallup just because I trust their quarterback the most to pass the ball.
So I'm gonna slightly different route. I love Gallup this week. I like Scary Terry this week. I agree. Hollywood Brown's kind of the odd man out here just because of his health concerns. I'm going with John Brown. I think what Dak was able to do against the Giants. I don't. Obviously, it's Josh Allen. He's not as good as Dak. That offensive line isn't as good as the Cowboys, but I see a similar thing happening. I mean, John Brown, we just talked about. He had, if I'm not mistaken, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 120 yards at a TD. I think he easily gets that this week. Gallup and Scary Terry, I think that's kind of their ceiling. I think John Brown's ceiling is like 14 targets, 10 receptions, 2 TDs. Like, he could easily get overly utilized this game. And the one saving grace that may keep this game close is Saquon Barkley. He's just so freaking good at football that he can somewhat keep the Giants close in any matchup. And if that happens, John Brown's going to have a monster week, in my opinion. To me, it's not whether John Brown has a good week. It's whether the Giants stay close enough that they keep throwing the ball downfield to John Brown. And I think it happens.
Yeah, I really think that's the big question mark is just how much do the Bills realistically end up having to pass the ball in this game? And that's really the only thing capping John Brown's upside this week.
All right, so we're going to move on to finally tight ends. Darren Waller, another one of the low-end tight ends that kind of exploded. Darren Waller, T.J. Hockenson, and Mark Andrews. I'll go first on this one. I think the floor play 100% is Darren Waller. 100% of the snaps, he's going to be utilized. He's playing against Kansas City. There's not a world where this man does not get at least 10 points from your tight end position. And I think for that reason, when you're looking at tight ends, I'm not looking for a guy to score 30 points. I just want to get my 15 points guaranteed. I'm going with Darren Waller. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, of these three, Waller is definitely my pick. I feel like when people say, like, oh, Darren Waller has the highest floor, I think he also has a really, really high upside just because it's really just him and Tyrell Williams as the pass catchers on that offense. I think he has – I mean, people keep saying TJ Hockenson has the higher ceiling, but I disagree with that because there's way more mouths to feed in Detroit than there is on the Raiders.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't think Mark Andrews is a bad start, but it's 100% true. This Chiefs-Raiders game is going to be high scoring. Every Chiefs game is going to be. when you have such disproportionate amount of offense and such a bad defense, you're gonna get points. Darren Waller, he's gonna have a great game. Now, if he has that monster game, is gonna be seen. I think it comes down to, does he get the TDs? I don't think he was even targeted in the red zone, unfortunately, last week. So hopefully that changes.
They didn't really have too much opportunity to target. I think they only threw the ball a couple times in the red zone, even.
No, yeah, it was only 2 times. I think one was Tyrell and one was like Grant or something.
Yeah, Grant, I think it was. So there's really only 2 passes to be had. So
yeah. All right. Well, that concludes all our segments. Since there's only 2 of us, and it's a little bit early. Again, let's go through the ins and outs. Joe Mixon in, Antonio Brown is in. Let's actually talk about this a bit. First of all, do you trust Ian Rappaport? Because he's saying he's getting a lot of snaps. They're going to utilize him, which makes sense. It's Antonio Brown, best wide receiver in the NFL. But the thing is, Josh Gordon, when he came over last year, he had 22% of the snaps his first week, had 2 catches, 2 receptions.
I don't think you could really go off what Josh Gordon did because he was hurt with the hamstring injury.
Totally forgot about
that. That plays a big factor in them easing him in. So it's really hard to tell what to expect. I just think, I mean, I can't blame you if you play him. His upside is astronomical this week. It's if you have if you have Josh Gordon on your team too, I'm probably going to play Josh Gordon over Antonio Brown. Just they're both very similar players in what they could do this week. And one of them I know has been in the system longer. That's about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm playing Antonio Brown in 1 league. It's our Tony and I's keeper league with a few of our friends. 2 QB Superflex. Going against probably one of the best lineups in the league, so I threw him in there. And the hope is, Antonio Brown basically gets what Philip Dorsett did last week just against the Miami defense, which is somehow worse than what Pittsburgh showed last week. All right, so other ins and outs. I'm trying to find here on the Twitter feed. Well, looking at the Giants inactives, Sterling Shepard out, Darius Slayton out, Garrett Dickerson out. The only pass catcher on that team right now is Evan Ingram and somewhat Cody Lattimore. So, again, the only way that they're staying in the game with Buffalo is Saquon. I just happen to believe that Saquon can do that. He's just he's the first person in the NFL since I've watched that's comparable to Adrian Peterson, where you can actually have someone carry a team with a running back.
Just to add to that, even Cody Lattimore is slightly banged up with a calf injury.
So. That's hilarious. Here we got Field Yates. He always does these. I love it. Antonio Brown active, Mixon active. So Mike Williams is active. If you have Mike Williams, Hunter Henry's out. It seems like it'd be a good play, but worried about the injury at all? Would you play him in your flex?
I mean, yeah, I think you got to just the upside, especially with Henry gone. They're one of those teams too. They really like that big body player to catch passes. So his touchdown upside is really high this game. Even if that's all they really utilize him in, they keep him off the field until they're in the red zone. I can see that being a possibility.
Yeah.
So,
Ziggy Ansah, Cody Lattimore, or Ziggy Ansah is inactive, so that's kind of a big blow. Maybe Ziggy, he's now in Seattle, correct? Now I seem like an idiot. Yes, he is on the Seahawks. I was about to say fire up your James Connors because I think that actually affects, just another reason to be high on this Pittsburgh offense this week. Cody Lattimore, like you said, he's banged up, but he is active. Mark Ingram, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews were all on the injury report. They're all playing. I think they're all going to get good workloads, just except Hollywood Brown. I think Hollywood Brown's I think he gets 40% of snaps this week. Nick Bosa's active. David Bakhtiari is active, so that's going to help Aaron Rodgers a little bit against the Vikings. Obviously, if he wasn't playing, Danielle Hunter would feast, and I'd be actually taking back a couple things I said about Devontae Adams.
Are you worried about Mixon and all now that Bosa's active for the Niners?
No. I don't. Bosa's good, I don't think he's as good as his brother. And I also Joe Mixon's, if he was a guy that doesn't pass catch, I'd say maybe a little bit. But it's also Joe Mixon. He can run inside the tackles. He can run outside the tackles. There's so many ways to get around Nick Bosa. And the big thing is, D Ford is not a good run stopper, so you just run at D Ford. I think that's what happened last week, to be
Yeah.
honest. Even DeForest Buckner, who I think is a good DT, he struggled in the run game last week. So he was getting, they trapped him on a couple plays with Ronald Jones, 10 yards straight up the middle, no problem. I think Joe Mixon could turn those 10 yards into a house call, no problem. So that's part of the reason I'm so high on Mixon is watching that game. I saw a lot of things I didn't like in the 49ers run defense against such a bad running team.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll just end it here. Thank you guys for watching. Next week, we're going to have all four of us back. There's probably going to be some more arguments. I know AJ always has some crazy takes. Kramer hates Mitchell Trubisky and Kirk Cousins, so we'll bring him up next week. But thank you guys for watching as always. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
You guys, good luck.